This is the image that effectively broke open the project for me very early on in terms of finding a visual clue to exploring the idea of belonging and the notion of belonging in the context of mixed heritage and third culture kids and adults. I extended this exploration of hands into the idea of actually holding belongings that might have a historical resonance or pertinence for the subject, or be something that maybe keyed them into where they were at now. And this exploration of the details of a person, in this case hair, married with belongings or documentation, I began to explore in handmade transparencies and physical montages and layerings, which became a code almost for where I was going. As can be seen here, where I began to put or juxtapose regular photography with these handmade or homemade layerings, which included fictional documentation, real artifacts and found objects, and some of the transparencies I'd made earlier. Again, this montage framework. And that montage idea became something I explored in physical space, and also beginning to bring myself into some of the images here, admittedly only in a school photograph. But again, it's this layering, this juxtaposition of items that seem to be jammed together to explore this sensation of heritage. At the same time, it became very important to me that I began to explore further other people who had similar experiences, and I began to accrue a group of people who were prepared to work with me, third culture kids, multiple heritage people, just to bring the portrait element in, because I think that, for me, that's important. And that diversity of people included, multiple demographics as well, from children up to older adults, just exploring them in the context of where they are at now and what that might look and feel like in some way. And I'm still teasing that out as part of the project. It's become a major element of the work. Around that time, sadly, my younger brother passed away unexpectedly, and that obviously had a massive bearing on the project. And really, it's become the instigator for me exploring the sense of events that happen to us as becoming part of our own mythology, our own greater history. And I extended that by exploring artifacts and items in a very formal, painterly way, in this case, similar to vanitas painting, just because objects seem to have such a great resonance for us, especially if they're objects that have historical significance or family significance. Extending that, I began to explore food as a symbol of heritage, especially where it's got a sort of a psychological resonance or hints at something slightly off-kilter in terms of where the person is at now and where they may have come from, this clashing again of experiences, juxtaposition of experiences. I've extended that exploration of food quite considerably over the project in the past few modules, especially wanting to tweak out this sense of dislocation and psychological disruption that is also part of the mixed heritage experience. Concurrent with the exploration of food is the urge to bring the more performative into the portrait work. And this first image with Sue kind of began to hint at that for me with the use of props, a secondary space perhaps that's being hinted at through the portrait. And again here, using props in kind of recognizable environments. The domestic environment has been quite important, but it's, again, this sense of where is the person at? Are they here where we see them, or are they actually potentially somewhere else at the same time? And I think that's really important. And ultimately, recently, the theatricality of this performative element and this dislocation of space, especially through the idea of found spaces and found locations, has come to the fore. And that's something that is still pushing me forward and I hadn't fully realized yet. I also began to play, just extending that idea of a person's personal mythology through the context of something called biomythography. Here, kind of using digital montage techniques to just begin to explore what that might look like visually, also using myself as a subject, and here actually using a visual sequence of my own DNA as one of the layers in the image. I'm not really sure about this approach at the moment. I think it might have some pertinence in a more subliminal or sublime way, although it is interesting. And more recently, this has led me back to this idea of diptychs, especially in square format. That's become quite a major feature of the work in my most recent module. But again, just looking at how things play off each other, in this case, some homemade transparencies of some of my earlier images. And that has led to some overt work in square format diptych, here exploring the recent sensations of lockdown, but more in keeping with that is the sense of isolation and the sort of racial and social isolation that I have experienced myself, and I know that others have experienced, and tweaking that out. And also, again, just keeping this sense of mythography, biomythography and mythology moving and resonating through the work if I can. Here, a little bit more to do with a direct myth of Sisyphus, but again, just exploring the sensation of biomythography, and ultimately exploring wider narratives than a diptych or a triptych can offer. Here, almost trying to find a literary or cinematic epic feel to a person's experience that resonates perhaps with their history of migration, be it from themselves or their wider family.